Welcome into Minnesota Vikings Now. I am Tom Downey. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk Lamar Jackson and Odell Beckham. Could they end up being members of the Vikings organization? Before we do that, however, we're asking you guys to share today's video. Biggest way for us to continue to grow here is if you do that. In fact, if you share, specifically on Twitter, but if you do it on Facebook, you guys are awesome too. If you share it on Twitter and you tag producer Patrick in a tweet at Pat Siepman NFL, link will be in the comment section in the description to make it a bit easier for you guys. If you tag him, we will give you a shout out on a future show. So help us out by sharing today's video on social media. Let's begin with the latest on one Lamar Jackson. Could the Vikings trade for Lamar? This is an interesting situation that I think is maybe a little unfair the way it's being framed. I'll explain what I mean here. But this comes to us from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. He listed the Vikings as a Lamar Jackson destination, kind of the sleeper one. Of course, the background here is Ravens placed the non-exclusive tag on Lamar Jackson, which allows teams to make an offer sheet, sign him. The Ravens can either match it or get 2 first-round picks back in exchange. Be 2 late first-round picks from the Vikings standpoint. It was very strange, and collusion mentioned by me and others, that so many teams who are in obvious need of a quarterback, even worse than the Vikings are. I'm talking about the Commanders, talking about the Falcons, the Raiders were like, nah, we would rather sign Taylor Heineke and Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo than even look at the direction of Lamar Jackson. That did not make very much sense. I get Lamar's missed time. I get his coming off injury stuff. All of that is fair. All of that is valid. You're still getting an MVP caliber quarterback. I know the passing numbers don't look great the past 2 years. The supporting cast has been a very real problem in Baltimore. Marquise Brown has not been that great. He's been banged up. Same too with Rashad Bateman. They have Mark Andrews. They were giving Sammy Watkins a real run this year at receiver. That's how dire things were at that position. So there are some issues here that we will get into. But in general, do you want to trade for Lamar Jackson? This question will be the pinned comment on today's video. So if an ad break comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there, type in your Y for yes or your N for no. On paper, of course I want to upgrade at quarterback. You get Lamar Jackson, you can make a very strong argument you have the best quarterback in the division, or actually in the entire conference. You might be able to make a top 5 argument for Kirk Cousins, but Lamar's upside, his impact, his ability, it's all a little bit higher. However, this is not going to happen. This would be a shocking development that doesn't really fit with the mold here. It's the Kirk Cousins issue, right? He has a no-trade clause. Now, the way his deal, since they restructured it, and I don't think there's a way to, revert it to make a trade more feasible, you trade Kirk Cousins right now, you're paying him $38.75 million. And that's an additional loss of $18.5 million. You can do it after June 1st and save $10 million, but again, that kind of defeats the purpose of trading for Lamar. It would have to be an after June 1st trade, basically, which kind of gets you up against the deadline for the franchise tag as it is. And you run into problems of, well, Kirk has a no-trade clause. Does that mean he really wants to be traded? I mean, maybe Baltimore could make sense for. Maybe a swap agreement there could work, but it would require Kirk's approval there. Kevin O'Connell tends to prefer the accurate quarterbacks. I think he could make it work with Lamar, but Lamar wants the bag. And when you're already paying Kirk the bag this year, again, $38.75 million in dead cap right now if you trade him, that's a big deal. And then you're going to give Lamar a probably fully guaranteed contract for 3, 4, 5 years, however long it is. That's going to approach $50 million. And yeah, there's your problem. That is an obscene amount of money at this stage to invest in the quarterback position. Now, it still doesn't answer the question, is Kirk Cousins good enough to win the Super Bowl with this team? I think in general, we do tend to overlook the value of even a Kirk Cousins-esque quarterback. I mentioned the Commanders. They didn't want to pay Kirk. That franchise has not recovered from that. They've been even worse than what they were. The Jets would have tried to get Kirk Cousins when Minnesota landed him, and look where they're at. They are still now getting hamstrung by the Packers, searching for a franchise guy because Zach Wilson just ain't it. So there's value in Kirk. but there'd be more value in Lamar Jackson. If you were to acquire Lamar Jackson, would this make the Vikings Super Bowl contenders? Why for yes and for no? Sound off for me in the comment section down below. I did not mean to rhyme. I'm sorry. Let's move to Odell Beckham and the Vikings, because this starts to make some sense now, right? We've mentioned it before. I think it remains a strong situation there. The Vikings were one of 12 teams to attend Odell Beckham's workout in Arizona. That was per Jonathan Jones, who says the teams represented at Odell Beckham's private workout in Arizona today included the Panthers, Giants, Patriots, Rams, Cardinals, Niners, Bills, Chiefs, Browns, Ravens. Browns part's kind of weird, by the way. And the Minnesota Vikings. We had kind of floated the Odell Beckham idea during free agency. At this stage, if the money matters, I want to emphasize if the money is correct, I do have interest in adding Odell Beckham. I think specifically for Minnesota, along with Justin Jefferson, it helps elevate your offense. You can still draft a receiver early if you want to, but now you aren't forced into taking a wide receiver in round 1 or round 2 or heck, even round 3 if you had to. That puts you can get by with KJ Osborne, but starts to make some more sense. The issue with Odell Beckham, beyond the money, I think the injuries are an under-the-radar red flag here. Played 14 games in the regular season for the Browns and Rams, 7 games in 2020, didn't play at all last year. So you're talking about a three-year run here of 21 games total, not including playoffs. Those are real injury concerns and red flags that you have to be aware of. Not to mention the alleged, as we'll get into, monetary demands right now for Odell Beckham. So do you want to sign Odell Beckham? Let's bring back one of the best chat sports weigh-ins ever. OBJ for yes or no BJ for no. Go vote in the comment section. The big question mark here, and it all ties into the money, the injury stuff here, how much does Odell Beckham have left in the tank? I think depending on how you do this contract, you would like to have it out after a year or worst case 2 to bail on this deal, which I think Odell Beckham doesn't really want because that's not players want to protect themselves. Teams have to protect themselves as well. Here are some reasons why Odell Beckham I do think works. He's friends with Justin Jefferson. As former LSU players, that certainly would be appealing. He also played for Kevin O'Connell briefly with the Los Angeles Rams, so there is that familiarity between head coach and wide receiver that I do think would be beneficial for Odell Beckham. Wide receiver 2 is now a need. You move on from Adam Thielen. Right now it's KJ Osborne, Jalen Reagor, other lesser-known guys I'm not going to mention here. Wide receiver 2 is a concern and a priority as it sits at this point in free agency for Minnesota. Number 4 is the Vikings have other offensive weapons. They have TJ Hawkinson. They have Justin Jefferson. They, for now, I guess, still have Dalvin Cook. That's kind of been a weird no decision made yet there. But if you're trying to add another playmaker, Odell Beckham as your third option, it's a lot more appealing than your number 2, although he has to be on board with maybe not getting the same volume of targets. And we know he wants to play for a contender. He's not going to go play for the Texans. They need a receiver pretty badly. He ain't going to Houston, I promise you that. And if he does, they must have paid him a massive bag there. Now, speaking of the bag, Odell denies the report saying he wants $20 million per year, which I would hope would be the case because, he's not worth $20 million at this stage. He also said he's not going to play for 4, and I don't know who offered him 4. I wonder if it's Dallas. That seems like a Dallas thing to do there. The Cat Boys, as we call them. But 20 and 4 is a big range. Can you get him to 10? Do you want to give him the Thielen deal he just got from Carolina, $325 out after year 2, maybe year 1 if you need it? That could certainly start to be appealing at some level there for the Minnesota Vikings. There's also this part. Does Odell Beckham want to play in the cold? That was an alleged claim that he wanted to play somewhere warm. In general, football players don't like playing in the cold because you'd rather be comfortable when you're doing your job every single day. But if the money's right, if the role is right, I wouldn't be that worried about the cold. Living in Minnesota might not appeal that much to Odell Beckham, but I think at a certain point, OBJ has to be aware of what his market really is. It's not going to be the biggest market ever. He is not the gem of this year's free agency class. He's just not at this stage in his NFL career. So if Minnesota has interest, I think Odell Beckham will have interest as well.